Awesome. So I am here with the one and only Laura Jane Bolton, all the way down in Mexico. And I first came across your work. I don't even know. My mom was asking. I was like, I'm having this lovely lady on my podcast tomorrow. And I showed a couple of videos to my parents. They're like, oh, she seems lovely. How did you like come across her? And I can't really remember exactly. But all I know is that I follow you on Telegram. And over the last several years, literally everything that you post, I vibe with, which is very rare.
That's
Is
awesome.
yeah, like all the, and it's been so nice because yes, you've done a little bit of like revealing the darkness, but you always bring it back to the light. You always bring it back to, what can we do to fortify ourselves and be these light workers and these warriors on the leading edge in a sustainable way. And so that's what I really like about your message is it's very uplifting and life giving. So thank you for being a lighthouse during these Aquarian times.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's really nice to hear that because when you're on, especially when you're on social media, you don't usually know what impact you're having. It's really like sometimes it can be difficult to know, and you don't know the people. You see the likes, the numbers, or you'll see a comment and it's just a tiny picture, and you don't know the people. It's a really strange kind of dynamic. So it's really lovely when I get to actually meet someone that's interested in what I have to say and vibes
Thank
with
you.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really it's that's been kind of the blessing of the whole convid pandemic is meeting all these amazing souls all around the world. And I remember being on a chat thread, or no, it was a live discussion on Telegram on Alex the Way Forward channel, led by his friend
Hmm.
Christine.
Hmm.
And somebody was sharing a story of all these. He used to be a camp counselor, and he would lead this game where they'd go into a cave, and all the kids would have these headlamps on, and he first had them all huddle together and turn on their headlamps, and it didn't light up much of the cave. And then he said, okay, now disperse. And like all the kids ran throughout the entire cave. And he's like, now turn on your headlights. And the whole cave lit up. And I feel like that's a great metaphor for what's going on now is like we are geographically dispersed throughout the world, but we're lighting up the entire world through that sort of way of being
Yeah,
dispersed.
absolutely. I love that metaphor. That's that's
Yeah.
that's a really beautiful way of looking at it, and it's so true. It's we each make a difference, but it's collectively when you put all of that difference together that you really see the power. And I think, as individuals, we can sometimes feel like, oh, what difference can I make? But if every single person is
Oh, we're getting a little bit of technical difficulty. One sec. Okay, we're back online.
okay. Yeah, so I was just saying, like, I think that as individuals, it can sometimes feel like how much of a difference can I make, just little me. But every single person can make an impact. Every single thing we think, feel, say, do, our energy, how we're being has an impact on others. And the question really is, what kind of impact do we want to have? And when
Yes.
you add all those people together, there's millions of us, well, at least millions of us
Yes.
around the world who are on this awakening path. And I think sometimes we get really focused on the people who are asleep and wanting them to wake up, but actually it's the people who are on the awakening path who actually have the ability to make a difference. And if we're
Mm.
all doing our own thing and making a difference in our own way, when you add us all together across the world, as you just said, all these little beams of light, it that's what creates the collective shift. And so
Yes.
that's where my focus is really. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for that reminder. And I always like to start these interviews by asking the guest if they have any sort of meditation that you can recommend for the audience that you love that would be like anchoring or bring in more light or just something that you practice yourself, maybe that you'd be willing to share.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've tried lots of different kinds of meditations and meditative practices. And I think it very much depends on the individual. So I've got, there's one very, very simple thing that I do really just to ground myself. And that's simply to start with breath work. I find breath work very
Nice.
powerful, more than just kind of sitting and meditating. And so,
Totally. I
you know,
love breath
doing
work.
doing like deep breaths, slow deep breaths in and out, and just like putting my hands on my heart and putting the focus on my heart and imagining myself having roots in the ground. And that's just really good to like ground us when we're feeling kind of, you know, a bit out of control or anxious or whatever. And it's just a very, very simple thing that you can, and it's quick, that you can
Nice.
do really anywhere. I also find that doing certain things as a meditative practice is very effective. So for me, I really love doing painting, particularly oil painting. So that's actually my deepest meditative practice, because when I'm doing oil painting, I tell you, I do not think of anything. I don't
Wow.
even have thoughts. I'm so present, I'm so in the moment, and it's just so grounding and calming. And so people can do that with anything that they really enjoy. I think sometimes just being in that total presence can be, you know, super kind of grounding and calming and healthy for us. And then if I want to, you know, go kind of a bit deeper, I really like Joe Dispenza's
Oh,
meditations.
yes.
Yeah, they're pretty powerful. They're usually quite long, sort of 45, 50 minutes, but I found
Cool.
them to be very powerful if you want to have a longer practice and go deeper. So yeah.
I have his book, Becoming Supernatural,
Yes.
and I love the Blessing of the Energy Centers meditation.
Yeah, I have that
That's really
one.
cool. Well,
Yeah, I really like that one.
for the sake of time, would you want to lead us just through a quick of the heart one, where you're blessing or focusing at the heart and grounding down through the roots? I think that would be beautiful.
Sure, yeah, we
Yeah.
can do. So
Okay.
so I would just close your eyes and just start to take deep breaths in. I like to go in through the nose and out through the mouth. So I just go into the count of 4 and then out to the count of 4. And as I'm doing that, I'll put my hand on my heart and just really focus my attention there. So really just the consciousness just focused on the heart area, and just start breathing in. So in through the nose and out through the mouth. In through the nose and out through the mouth. And just keep breathing in that way and keep the focus on the heart. And then just imagine roots just going from your heart all the way down and all the way down into the ground and all the way down into the earth, deeper, deeper, and deeper. And then just feel the energy just moving up from the earth, up through your roots, and all the way up into the heart. And if you want, you can just imagine the energy just continuing to pulse, like from the heart into the earth, and then from the earth back up into the heart.
That's so simple, but so profound.
Mm.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it
I
is. It's
love that.
just simple, and you can just do it for like 2 minutes.
Yes.
And I just feel like so much calmer and
Right?
just super
Oh.
present. And you can do it anywhere. I used to
Mm-hmm.
like, I used to, when I first started getting into doing meditation, I was still suffering from kind of bouts of anxiety, and I might be out somewhere and start feeling super anxious, and I would just go to the bathroom and just lock myself in a cubicle just for 2 minutes, and and do that, and I would just feel so much, so much better. And it's just amazing to me the power that we have to change our state.
Yes.
Whether it's through just doing that, through breath work, it's almost instant, and we have the power to do that, and that's why I love those practices.
Totally. What other good daily habits have you found are beneficial for being the light goddess that you are, and having those good daily habits that keep you in your highest?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have those those habits every day, and I've kind of changed a little bit as time has gone on, but at the moment my first thing is the physical health, right? Because it's not just the emotions and the spiritual stuff, it's also the physical. So I actually do intermittent fasting.
Nice.
So I usually don't have any breakfast. I'll eat sort of late morning, lunchtime, keep myself really hydrated. I do coffee enemas,
Nice.
all the kind of healthy things, because we have to keep our vessel healthy.
Yes.
But in terms of other practices, breath work really is my favorite one. I often do the Wim Hof
Nice. I did that
method.
this morning. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I don't know, it just really energizes me, and it just feels so good. And I do it for maybe 10-15 minutes, and sometimes I get really high. I don't know if
Oh
that
yeah.
happens with
Yes.
you.
It does for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the inorganic ones don't want us talking about this liberating stuff or something, but anyway, we're gonna keep going, and we're
Yeah.
just going to Om Namah Shivaya. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, so we were talking about the Wim Hof breath work, and how powerful that is, and how it can really set you up for the day. And then I'll do usually a shorter meditation in the morning, like the one that we just did.
Nice.
And later in the day, normally in the evening, I'll do a longer Joe Dispenza
Good.
meditation. So either the blessing of the energy centers, or one of the other ones. And so they're kind of my essentials for the day, and it really
Good.
depends on what I've got going on. But I also really think it's important to move. So in the morning, I will put some music on that I really love, and I will just dance, like on my own, just dance around,
That's awesome.
and sing, and because it's all activating, right? The voice is
Yes.
helping the vagus nerve, and it's the movement is creating the blood pumping, and the energy, the energy circulating, and it's just you do that for 5-10 minutes and you just feel amazing. And if you
Totally.
couple that with like a Wim Hof breath work, you're like raring to go. So
Oh my
yeah,
gosh, yes.
I do that in the morning as well.
Fantastic.
And also if ever I feel a bit like I need a pick me up, like I just, I get up, I'll just dance for one song.
Awesome.
And I feel, renewed again.
That's so awesome. It sounds like we have similar practices. I teach with a fellow, actually, he's in Mexico right now. I think he's in Tulum. And we teach a Sunday men's sexual kung fu class that involves primal dancing and making sound, and all these different techniques from Montauk Chia. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
No.
He basically brought a technology from ancient China to the West called sexual kung fu, and we use it to teach men how to separate the orgasm from the ejaculation.
Uh-huh.
So then they can choose, because usually it takes women longer to orgasm.
Yeah.
And the men sometimes have either premature ejaculation or impotency or things of that nature. So we do that, and the primal dance is a huge aspect.
Yeah.
So yeah, and also we always start with some breath work.
Yeah, absolutely. I love breath work, and I found that, especially working with clients, I found that sometimes if they're not doing any kinds of practices like that, meditation, particularly if you've got a very dysregulated nervous system, meditation can be a bit much to
Yes.
start with. So I get them started on breath work,
Nice.
because breath work is, it's more of it's not passive, you know,
Mhm.
it's you're breathing, you're moving, you know, you've got something that you're kind of, you know, focusing on, and that can be, you know, incredibly powerful, and also for, you know, helping our nervous system. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think everyone should do breath work.
Amen. And I've been reading this book called Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda.
Okay.
And I think it's chapter 36. He talks about the original yoga, because I guess the only two actual yoga asanas poses mentioned in the Yoga Sutras are tree pose and lotus pose, like sitting cross legged. And
Hmm.
all the rest were imported into India when the British colonized from a
Hmm.
series called Primal Gymnastics from Scandinavia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like what we think in the West of yoga is actually really from Scandinavia. And this
Interesting.
book is saying the original yoga was literally lying on the ground and doing breath work. And
Hmm.
that Jesus and Kabir and Krishna all did this original form, which was literally just like just breathing to
Yeah.
super oxygenate and bring all the prana into their system to rejuvenate the entire system.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that doesn't surprise me. And I think that, you know, yoga has just become so westernized. You know, it's like these days for most people it's all about, you know, the outfit that you're wearing and how
Yeah,
many amazing poses you can get into, and it's very
exactly.
competitive, and
It's like
it's
gymnastics
that's not,
competition.
yeah, exactly. And I'm not really into that. I prefer
No,
more of the kind of simple, you know, simple kind of yoga that you're talking about.
totally. Have you ever tried Kundalini yoga?
I have.
How do you
Yes, I
feel
have.
about that?
Yeah, I tried it. I first tried it. When was it that I first tried it? I think it was yeah, it was 2020, when I was in Tulum, and I I did it quite regularly,
Hmm.
and I found it to be very powerful. Actually, I know there's lots of controversy around Kundalini yoga, and well, there's controversy around everything, but
Yeah.
I found it to be really, yeah, just really powerful. And I like the fact that it's, you know, it's not all the pose, you know, you're not doing loads of crazy poses.
Yes.
It's a very different kind of yoga to the others. So I just, yeah, I really did feel a difference. I just don't
Nice.
have a practitioner that I found near near where I am now to do that. But at the time,
Nice.
I did find it powerful. Yeah.
I heard that Gurmukh, she's a like a senior Kundalini teacher. I heard she moved somewhere outside of Tulum.
Okay.
So she might still be there, and she's on the same page, which is really liberating. You know,
Yeah.
she didn't get the injection, and she talks about it in her class in a very diplomatic way. And my friend goes to her classes, or was going at least last year when he told me this. I had like problems with addiction to cocaine and alcohol from sort of 2013 to 16, and then I went to see a psychic, and they're like, "Oh, you need to do Kundalini yoga." And I was like, "Okay." And like around that time, I was teaching at all these country clubs and yoga studios, and my students kept saying, "Could you teach us Kundalini yoga?" And I was like, "Okay, I guess that the universe is telling me to explore this." And I remember in the first class, like I was crying like cathartically, and we were dancing and sing. There was a lot of singing, and I'm a singer, so I was like, "Oh, this is really fun." And yeah, as you said, there is controversy around it, and Yogi Bhajan had a very light side, but seemingly also a very dark side. So it's like, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think part of the dominator system wants to completely poo poo the entire lineage now. And it really feels like it's throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because that lineage literally freed me from a cocaine addiction,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
I know a few people who have used it to overcome addictions and severe depression and things like that. So it clearly is powerful. It clearly works. And I
Mm.
very much believe in finding what works for you, and, you know, trying things out regardless of what other
Yes.
people say about it, because, you know, it doesn't matter what you look at, whether it's certain types of breath work or certain types of yoga or whatever it may be, someone's always got something negative to say about it. And then there's
Totally.
people that say positive. So for me, it's about the discernment within, and just deciding what's right for me, and what do I enjoy, and what feels good to me, and what feels right for me.
Amen. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
our natural state is to be high on our own supply.
Yeah.
And you know, I always say my three pillars are sexual kung fu, so sexual transmutation practices, which involve breath work, I guess Mother Teresa was interviewed, sort of one of her last interviews, and they said, how do you get all this energy to help people? And she's like, well, I'm paraphrasing, but I feel the power in my lower centers, and I allow it to rise up into my heart and my higher my hands and my higher self to fuel my mission.
Mm.
So I think she understood sexual transmutation to some degree. So it's like sexual transmutation for men, semen retention, and superfood nutrition and detox. I feel like the key word for these times is detox in
Oh
every
yeah.
sense of the word, which makes me want to ask you about your decision to detox, leave social media and move on from that.
Oh yes. Yeah. So this was maybe two weeks ago now.
Resume recording. There we go. So
Okay, so
we
yeah,
have a little technical difficulty, but you know what? It's like Freddie Mercury said, the show must go on. We're making this happen, and it's gonna be a juicy interview
yeah,
regardless.
we can do it. We can do it.
Exactly.
So yeah, so I was just saying that like a couple of weeks ago, I was just sitting with myself and I just had this feeling like I don't want to use social media anymore. Why am I
Mm-hmm.
on social media? And then I really started to just think about it and question it. And what I realized was I'm not actually getting any value myself from using social media anymore. I recognize that for the first three years of this scamdemic,
Mm-hmm.
social media was incredibly helpful, and
Yes.
I am very grateful for it because it allowed me to use my voice, it allowed me to express, to connect with other people who are of a similar heart and mind.
Yes.
And I think it played a crucial role in the Great Awakening
Mm-hmm.
itself.
Oh, I think
Without
so.
social
Yeah.
media, it wouldn't have happened. But kind of 3 years in, I've been reflecting a lot lately. I've been shifting gears in various ways, and I just feel like 3 years in, I am really only using social media just to share stuff and to scroll.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also very shadow banned, so I don't accumulate like I don't get new
That's like
followers
me.
because my my content, if I look at my stats, my content doesn't get out to anybody who's not already a follower.
Yes.
And
Yeah. Same
so
here.
I just thought, you know what, I'm spending so much time on it because it's so addictive.
Mm-hmm.
Even with all the practices I do, even with how conscious I am, it does not matter. You go on it and it is designed to be super, super addictive, and you end up scrolling, and it just didn't feel good to me. So I
Right.
was like, well, why am I doing something that doesn't feel good to me?
Yeah.
And where could I better spend my time? So I decided that I'm going to stop using all social media at the end of February. And I'm just going to invest that time and energy in still creating content, but content that will be on my website, content that will be going out through my mailing list, for people that are genuinely interested in it, because the majority of people on social media are just scrolling.
Yes.
And there's so much content. You're just eager to get to the next thing.
Especially
And
with reels, the implementation of
yeah,
the reels. It's
yeah, there's
so,
no
yeah.
attention span, and there's just more and more and more. And that's why it's designed that way, because you just want to get to the next thing, and what's the next thing that I can find out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my thinking is, look, if people get a lot of value from my content, they will either, be listening to my podcast, or they'll be, looking on my website, or they'll be on my mailing list where I send out a weekly newsletter with all new content. So I'm not going to be stopping content. It's just
Yes.
I'm not going to be consumed by the social media. And I just feel like when I'm on there, I just feel horrible.
Yeah.
Even though I follow positive accounts, even though I'm, sharing stuff that is meaningful to me, I just don't feel good being on there. I start to feel nauseous.
Yeah.
It's like there's something in there that's toxic and dark, and it just doesn't feel right to me. So I'm like, there is a it's not in resonance with me anymore. Doesn't feel good. So, you know, why would I do something to myself that,
That doesn't
that
feel
doesn't
good.
feel good? I'm just not prepared to do that. So yeah,
Amen.
I decided to and the reason I decided to not just stop immediately was because I want to keep letting people know, look, I'm
Yes.
not going to be using it, but here is where you can access, my content if you want to.
Awesome.
And then after that, I have no reason to use it. And also I really want to spend more time cultivating relationships with like real people, whether it's on Zoom like this or whether it's, in person.
Yes.
That's what we're designed for, and I think that social media provides this lure of like false connection.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we feel like we're getting a connection, but it's not true connection, and then we kind of feel a bit unfulfilled, and
Yeah.
it isn't real connection. And so
No.
I want to focus on like real people.
Amen. I applaud your decision to make an exodus from these platforms. I do want to ask you, are you also leaving Telegram?
Yeah, I'm not going to be, I use Telegram for messaging. So,
Okay.
but I'm not going to be using my channel. I'm not going to delete any of my channels because
Okay.
there's a lot of content on them. So it doesn't make sense to me to delete the channel and delete all of the content that I've spent 3 years
Right.
putting out there in case people want to access it. But I'm just not going to be using it.
Cool.
And I just know that it's going to save so much of my time and energy. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
also think that we can, if we don't want to stop using social media, we can do things to have a healthier relationship with it. And that's why I recently created a 40-minute free masterclass just to help people to do that. Because when I first shared on my Instagram stories that I was not going to be using social media anymore, I had over 100 people message me, and almost every single one was telling me, I hate using social media. It doesn't feel good. I'm addicted to it. I don't know what to do. And that was what then it was those responses that then inspired me to create the masterclass video.
That's fantastic.
Because
And
it's
how can
clearly a
people
problem
access that?
people have. So at the moment it's in my, if people are on Instagram, it's in my Instagram profile, but it's also on my website. So pretty much everything can be accessed through my website, which is laurajanebolton.com.
Beautiful.
Yeah, all my content, my channels, YouTube videos, podcast, masterclass, everything is on there. So that's probably the easiest way for people to access it. Yeah.
Nice. And I have, right when I met you, I signed up for your newsletter, and that's been great. And I will say, I do love the memes that you post on Telegram, but maybe you can include a few in your newsletter.
Yeah, I might just have a little like meme. I might have a little meme
uplifting
section on
meme
my
section.
Yeah, I might have a meme section on my
Laura's
website.
dank memes.
Yeah, I have to say, I have like one of the best things over the last 3 years has been the memes.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to me because at first you might think, oh, memes are just silly, but I think what they do is they can make us laugh, which is incredibly important. But they've also, through this awakening, they've also, I think, helped to kind of help us feel less alone and to bond us,
Yes.
because you see a meme and you laugh at it and you get it, and then you send it to your friend and they're laughing at it. And there's something about the memes. And I also love the creativity. Like, it's really allowed people to just become so creative. And I'd never created a meme before, like 3 years ago. Like, it just wasn't anything that I do. And then I just started creating them, and some of them are quite funny. And
Totally.
And I don't know, it was just like a part of my creativity just to be able to express. And I know that there's many people that do that. And so I think they're a really good thing. And just seeing the lighter side of things and being able to laugh at things, even though it's crazy and just ridiculous. It's really important that we can see the humor and make humor out of things that aren't necessarily, the best.
Well, it makes me think of a video you shared of your experience. I don't know if it was with your niece. You were hiking. This was near the beginning of the scamdemic, and you were sharing about how you were hiking. And I think there were like people just like by themselves or maybe in small groups in the forest hiking with like masks on. And then
Yes.
you had looked at your niece, and you kind of both laughed. And it wasn't that you were laughing at them, but just the ridiculousness of the whole situation. And it made me laugh hysterically. And because I had just been on a hike and seen that as well here in Canada. So it's nice to, the memes and the sharing of the stories. It really, somebody said, don't fear the media, become the media. And so by being able to share our stories, we do bond, as you say, and we realize we're not alone.
Smile
Yes.
and just say, morning,
Yes.
and just be cheerful, like there is no, when we're aggressive towards people, or we're irritated towards them, that's not going to help anybody, because after we've done it, we don't feel good,
Right.
but it also doesn't feel good for them. And so that was a real shift for me to make, because in 2020 I was kind of outraged by everything, as I think most people were, and I just wanted everyone to wake up, and why are people complying and all of this stuff. But then I just realized that it's how we do things that really makes an impact. And
Right.
it's easier sometimes to be, annoyed, or to just give an eye roll, or to be dismissive. But if we're going to be the light, we need to be, putting that out. And I think if you're just like there with no worries, and you're cheerful, and like in some way, even if people don't realize it, it kind of has
Yeah.
some kind of positive effect on them,
Yeah.
even just the energy.
That's a really good
And so
point.
I've seen people, people that are on this awakening path, get really angry with people who are complying, or just shout, take your mask off, like they're it's an anger, right? It's like, but they don't quite know how to deal with it. So it's more of a kind of attacking stance, and it just doesn't help anybody, because they're certainly
Right.
not going to listen to you, and then they're probably going to feel bad, and then you're not going to feel very good afterwards. And so yeah, I just kind of would go around. When I was in the US, like, I would go to the supermarket, and I would literally be the only person not wearing a mask,
I know
like
that
the
feeling.
only.
Yeah.
I never saw anybody else in this like supermarket, and I would just look at people and just smile, because I was the only one that didn't have my face covered, and people would kind of look shocked and stuff. But it's you just got to get out there and be yourself, and I
Yes.
think it has a positive effect, whether we realize it or not.
Oh, totally. I
Yeah.
remember being in a Whole Foods, and everybody had masks on, but this one beautiful lady and her friend, and I think their children, and she had this beautiful polka dot outfit on, and she was smiling and just, lovingly walking around the store getting her groceries. And it was such a uplifting sensation in my body, that day I was wearing a mask and I just took it off. I just took that thing right off. And so
Yeah,
it really does have a ripple effect. And even if people kept their masks on, I really believe what you said is it does add to the morphogenic field in a positive way, just to
it does.
be as you
Yeah,
be.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we have to be the change. So if we are out there being annoyed with people, and being, aggressive or whatever, I get why it happens, but that's not being the change. Do we want
Exactly.
a world that's like that, or do we want a world that's more, friendly and kind and joyous? And so
Yeah.
it's just important to have that self-awareness, and like, how am I showing up? But it's not always easy. I think
Right.
especially in the earlier part of the pandemic, it was
More difficult, more
pretty
of a tall
tough for a lot
order.
of people. But
Yeah. And I think that relates
yeah,
back to our good daily habits. Because if we have a practice where we're feeling it to heal it, then we're going to be more trigger proof and more loving.
yes.
And like sometimes during breath work, I'll like scream into my hand or hit a pillow or cry. And then once I've felt that to heal that, then I can go out into the world and I'm less triggered by anything.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is why it's so, like, all of the self-care and the self practices are so important, because everything, all of our actions come from within. So if we're not feeling very good, we're tired, we're stressed out, we're not looking after ourselves, we're not going to be feeling great when
Right.
we go out there. And that's why I always say everything starts within, like all of it. And
Totally.
that's why it's just so important. And, you know, I used to focus very much on the external, you know, particularly in 2020, it was all about what other people were doing or not doing and what was going on out there. And then I realized, no, I need to do more of the focus more on my inner awakening and just have
Right.
you know, both the inner and outer, you know, going on at the same time. And I've changed like so much in the
So
last 3
much.
years. It's been crazy.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. It makes me think of, have you read Power versus Force by David Hawkins?
Oh, a long time ago.
And this the scale of consciousness.
Yes.
And I got his audiobook of like a bunch of live lectures. I think it's called The Ultimate David Hawkins Library.
Mm-hmm.
On It's on Audible. And during one of the lectures, he said, people always say, how do I change the world? And he said, well, you don't have to change. Like, the world doesn't need to be changed. It's fine as it is. You could do more good changing the world, quote unquote, by like meditating in a cave, doing breath work the rest of your life, feeling good. Because it's who you become. It's embodying the fullness of your true nature that actually will radiate outward to quote unquote heal the world. And he said that the scale of consciousness, the critical level is 200, which is the vibration of courage or bravery.
Yes.
And he said if you're vibrating above 200 or above, your brain chemistry is literally different than somebody vibrating in fear, guilt, shame, and doubt. So
Yes.
85% of the world is, as of 2009, maybe it's more now, hopefully it is, are vibrating below 200. So if
Yes.
you're, trying to make change and you're trying to, convince people of the truth, literally people vibrating below 200, they can't hear you. It just goes right over their heads because their brain chemistry is not in a place where they can actually receive what you're saying. So they'll just think you're nuts and that you should be dead. That's what he said, or something like
Yeah,
that.
I had plenty of people tell me that over the last 3 years.
Me too.
It's so true though. And this is, you know, this is the awareness of self, like how am I being? And I really feel that, you know, even within the truth community, there's a lot of people who are vibrating in those low vibrations. They
Yeah.
may be aware of the agendas and all of that stuff, which is important. But if you're constantly angry about it and worried and feeling hopeless, and you're in those lower frequencies, then you're not really doing much good
Right.
to yourself or to other people. So it's great to be out there and, you know, sharing what's going on and trying to help other people. But the question is, how are you doing it? Like, in
Yes.
what way are you showing up? And
Yeah.
that's what's important. And I feel like now, 3 years into this is the time, this is the opportunity for anyone who's not focusing on their inner world to, you know, their self-work, to really do that so that they can,
Mm-hmm.
you know, show up fully and, you know, do all the things that they want to do in the world, but really make a genuine difference. Because just shouting at people and telling them to wake up does not work. I mean, my
Doesn't
parent,
work.
like my father has been like completely asleep, and he still is. It doesn't, like, I spent 2 years sharing things with him, and it's, you
Didn't
know,
work.
it did not work. He got his jabs, he got his boosters, and then he got his flu one.
Wow, he got all the
Oh,
full
he
meal
no,
deal.
he's committed. He's all in. Like,
Wow.
and about a week after he got his flu one, he got the worst flu that he's ever had. And my mum was like, he's really, really sick. I've never seen him this sick.
Oh no.
And you know what's it's awful, but it's actually really funny as well. He's recovering now, and he's really happy that he's getting better, because he's looking forward to getting his next booster.
Oh my goodness.
And he hasn't been able to get it because he's been sick, and
Because
he
he's been
was
sick.
it was due. So now
Oh my
he's
God.
recovering. Now he's like, oh great, now I'm getting better, I can go and have my next booster.
Oh my word. How about your mom? Is she kind of between your understanding and his, or is she more on his page, or?
No, she's no to the jab, but she doesn't
Okay.
really understand much
I see.
else. But she's, yeah, she doesn't, she's not doing any of that. But interestingly, she gets pressure from my dad like every day to get it.
Oh, wow.
Because but the thing,
We keep getting cut out by the gremlins, but it's all good. We just keep showing up and we keep just shining. um, so we were talking about our parentals and how, you know, everybody's on different pages in terms of boosters and this and that. And it's similar with my family as well. And I'm the only one who didn't get the injection. But the beautiful thing is, and somebody told me this a few years ago, they said the key with difficult family members or not understanding things with friends and family is trade positions for interests. And I thought, okay, tell me more. It's like basically like instead of trying to convince them like we were before I was doing the same with my parents, find the common ground that you can both agree on. Like somebody also said it, like go for the low hanging fruit first. And so when Jordan Peterson was on a podcast and David Avocado Wolf retweeted the little 2-minute segment where he said, I regret getting the jab. I feel like I've been duped. This is ridiculous. I still have to get the test. The test is stupid. I took that. And I know that my parents, especially my dad, has all Jordan Peterson's books. So I sent that to them. And I just said, you know, I don't want to be judgmental, but isn't this interesting what Jordan is saying now? And that was like, I felt that was like going for a slightly higher hanging fruit. And so we've just been working our way up as a family to the point now where we all understand, me and my parents at least, that masks are ridiculous. They will not mask around people who want us to. And it's been very interesting, just slowly going up that tree.
yeah, absolutely. It's important to be very mindful of how we, you know, like I said, how we go about doing things, because I think for many people, there's this kind of sense of desperation. They just want other people to see what they see.
Yeah.
But the reality is they're not where you're at. And so they can't meet you in that place. You know, like I have a friend who was trying to send their parents all these documentaries about all the, you know, really dark satanic stuff. And I'm like, they're not aware at all of anything. You start sending them that, like it's just going to stress them out and you know, freak them out. So you have to, you know, kind of meet, as you said, meet people where they're at and find some common ground. But also I think it's really important to respect their choices and to respect the path that they're on. And this requires a certain level of surrender and letting go, which I used to really struggle with, but I've made a lot of kind of shifts in that area. And I got to the point where I just realized, look, I've shared the things that I've shared. Look, I'm telling you this, you know, like with my parents, I'm telling you this because I care and I want you to be well and, you know, I want you to know. And I shared. If they make a decision not to consume that content or not to investigate and to continue going ahead and getting all the jabs like my dad is, that is his choice. And who am I to make him do anything different? Like I've shared my truth, I've been open, but then it's up to the individual. And I think that's incredibly hard for a lot of people to accept, especially when it's loved ones, because we kind of don't want them to be in that situation. But it's also not our life, it's not our journey, and we're not responsible for them. We're only responsible for sharing our truth and for being authentic and expressing authentically. Whatever happens as a consequence of that, we need to trust and surrender to. And that's a difficult shift to make, because most of us want to control and we want things to be a certain way because it makes us feel better. And it's hard to accept, especially when it's a loved one, it's hard to accept that they're on a path that could be, I mean, like for my dad, like I don't think he will last much longer. He can't. I mean, you know, he just keeps getting them. But I've just totally accepted it. It's like, he's happy, like he loves it. He's looking forward to it. Let him have, like, just let him get on with it. Like it's his path. And who am I to, you know, to try and force him to do something that he doesn't want to do? So, yeah.
And as you said, the more we force, the more they just dig in their heels.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny with my mother, I was sharing stuff with her for a couple of years and she wasn't really getting it. And then because she doesn't really do the internet, you know, she's just a TV watcher. And there's a channel on British television that started it's like a mainstream news channel, but it's kind of, I would say it's like semi-truth.
Okay.
They're sharing a lot about the injuries and the,
Oh,
you know, the lies, and like they're sharing quite a lot of stuff about it. And
wow.
it's really funny because she loves watching TV. She starts watching this show, and then she starts messaging me, telling me, oh, the jabs are really injuring people, and this is happening and that's happening. And I'm like, Mum, I've been telling you this for like 2 years, but she wouldn't receive it from me. But
Right.
it's been really interesting to see her being exposed to a mainstream news channel
Yes.
that's telling her, and now she's telling me as if she's forgotten all the stuff that we ever talked about. And it's just so interesting to watch
Yeah.
this happening, and she'll message me and tell me what's going on as if I don't know. It's
Do
really
you know the
funny.
name of that show that she's watching?
It's called GB News. I think it stands for Great Britain News, but yeah, it's
Okay.
GB News.
Okay, cool.
And yeah, it's not like full truth, you know,
Right.
they still say it's like a real virus and it's deadly and all this
Yeah.
stuff, but it's especially around the jab, they're sharing all the truths around that. And so now my mum is well informed, without me.
It sounds like Fox News in the States, like they're not hip yet to the understanding that no virus has ever been isolated, but they're starting to talk about vaccine injuries.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
yeah, similar situation with my parents. They subscribe to Flipboard, which
Okay,
is
I've
some
not heard
sort
of it.
of, I think it's a kind of a news thing, like things that you're interested in. It'll like give you news articles. And so anyway, same story with my mom. She was being exposed to Newsmax, which I think is a conservative American news station that was also
Mm-hmm,
talking about vaccine injuries and stuff.
mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it was a very similar situation with my
Yeah.
parents, and it's all very interesting. And that leads me to my next question: is when did you come to the realization that germ theory was fraudulent?
I can't remember the exact date or month, but it was in 2020, probably mid to late 2020 was when I first started looking into it. So in early 2020, when we suddenly got this news of this terrible thing, I knew from the start it was nonsense.
Yeah, me too.
But it wasn't that I didn't believe it wasn't really that I didn't believe in viruses, or I did believe in viruses. It was just that I'd never had a reason to investigate it.
Mm-hmm.
Like all our lives, we're taught you catch a cold, you catch flu, you know, like we've just been taught that. And so at the start, I didn't really question it. I just knew that it was all
Mm-hmm.
being overinflated. I was like, oh God, it's just a flu. And they're just saying all this to implement their agenda and blah, blah, blah. I knew all of that from the very start. And people
Mm-hmm.
thought I was insane
Yeah, me
just
too.
for sharing that. You know, that was a really interesting, as I'm sure it was for you,
Yeah.
period of time where I suddenly realized all these people that I knew were completely buying it hook, line, and sinker,
Yeah.
and I wasn't, and they thought that I was mentally ill.
Same here.
Oh, I think you should go and see someone, you know,
Oh
I think you
yeah.
should go and see a therapist, or like, you're crazy, I hope you die, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Oh yeah. Got it
Yeah,
here too. Yeah.
I got all of that. But then at some point in 2020, I was, you know, because I was really in the rabbit hole, especially around all the agendas and all of that stuff, and just learning. I was already kind of a bit awake prior to 2020, but I feel like I went up a few notches in 2020, you know, like
Yes.
right down the rabbit hole. And then eventually I started.
Here we go.
Did you see that there was I think it was on the event in December last year, and there was an interview with David Icke, and
Mm-hmm.
his sound went,
Did
but
it?
he kept going,
Oh yes, I saw that. That was funny.
and
That
he's
was.
just like,
He's like. "Rah, rah."
and they couldn't get hold of him. But that's what made it really good, and everyone
That
thought it
was
was
good.
hilarious. So no,
It
it's
was
fine.
memorable. Yeah, this is going to
Yeah.
be memorable. So yeah. You were saying that you were relatively awake prior to 2020, but it was the impetus, and it reminds me of like the impetus of, I used to think that I was gay, and I really bought into the whole gay thing, but then I realized that sexuality for me is fluid and porous, and also gay, straight come with so much baggage. There's all these implied traits and tendencies that you're supposed to take on the moment you come out. And the whole idea I didn't like. And so I noticed that like all my gay friends were on these AIDS drugs, like hardcore black box chemotherapy drugs. And then to top it off, that they were actually taking them prophylactically. So whether you test positive or negative with a fake HIV test, all the gay dudes that I knew were basically poisoning themselves every day and encouraging me to do the same.
Wow.
And so I went to the pharmacist and I said, could I have the pharmaceutical manuscript for the AIDS drugs that you're giving all the gay guys? And they're like, do you want the one we give to the patients or to the doctors? I said, just give me everything, please. So I read through like 150 pages, and like the side effects of the PrEP, which is the prophylactic AIDS drugs, is AIDS. And I was like wondering how many gay guys actually take the time to read the I'm sure hardly any.
Hardly any, yeah.
And now there's a class action lawsuit. All these gay guys have permanent damage of their liver, their kidneys, fatty humps forming on the neck, bone fractures in the hips. Yeah. And there's a class action lawsuit towards Merck, who's created these AIDS drugs. So that was the impetus. Like for me back in 2012 or so, I was like, something's fishy here. Like this something's not right about being taught to like fear each other's bodies, and it just doesn't feel right. And then I discovered German New Medicine, and Kelly Brogan touched on it briefly. And then that's actually why I started the show, was I wanted to talk to Kelly Brogan because she kept talking about the dangers of psychopharmaceutical medications, but not as often about the dangers of HIV medications. But she'd written a few articles on it. And long story short, she ended up being on my show last year, and I got to ask her, and basically she's completely on the same page now. And she's like, there really is no evidence that strictly adheres to the scientific method that shows any virus has ever been isolated.
No, absolutely. And for me, I think that, prior to 2020, I was never like afraid of viruses or illness, because my view was, well, if you have a healthy body and a healthy immune system, it doesn't really matter what you come into contact with. But I hadn't ever explored the idea that viruses actually don't cause illness and aren't contagious. And then in 2020, I did start to explore that, and I started seeing content by people like Amanda Vollmer, and obviously Kelly, and then Alex Zek, and and then Angie Kaufman, and
nice.
And I started just seeing more and more of this stuff.
They've all been on this show.
Yeah, awesome.
Gratefully. Yeah, that's been another blessing of the pandemic, getting to speak to all these amazing humans.
Yeah, absolutely. And just finding each other, and finding people who are kind of on a similar page, and that can also help each other to grow and evolve. Because if it wasn't for those people, I wouldn't have necessarily found the information to learn what I learn, and then I wouldn't be able to then pass that on to other people. So this is one of the good things about the internet, the beauty of being able to share this information and connect with each other. But yeah, after a little bit of investigation, and watching a few videos and documentaries and some of these people's content, I was like, oh my God, like my whole life I was completely duped. Like, This is ridiculous. Yeah. And so then I started sharing that with people, and I then got the whole "you're insane" thing again. And so that's what's very interesting. Like, a lot of the people who are aware of the scamdemic and everything don't want to look at the virus issue.
Yeah.
So there's different levels, It's almost like you get to a certain level and you're like, no, it's too uncomfortable now, and then I'm not gonna go any further. Whereas I don't mind. Like, I am open to learning anything. I'm not attached to any of these beliefs. I'm like, if it's not true, I want to learn. Like, I want to learn about it. And so I was just all in, and I actually spent a lot of hours over the last couple of years learning about this subject, and I am like 100% convinced it's just all nonsense. But it's interesting that we now have this. It's almost like another step that people need to go, like even the people that are quite aware, because a lot of them are buying into the lab leak
Yes.
story, and they're still a bit worried about that. And oh, next time they're going to create something that's really bad, and it's not. It's not, and it's
It's
not
not
very
how it works.
empowering.
That's just it, isn't it? Yeah, it's great. And that's been another blessing is like people like Alex Zek, people like you, people like even Kelly Brogan, because of the way the world went. And even me who had been doing research into the fraudulence of virology, it turned it up for me where there was even more impetus to put in the hours, as you said, to really understand it for myself and do the reading. Kelly Brogan came out with a great ebook with Dr. Kaufman, Torsten Engelbrecht et al. It was
Oh yeah,
is HIV to AIDS what SARS-CoV-2 is to the coronavirus or something like that.
yeah,
And it's like 52 pages, and it's just so it just makes so much sense, and the
yeah,
bibliography is super huge for the science-minded people. Like they back up everything they say.
yeah,
And it also talks about the whole, like in certain indigenous tribes, there'd be this ceremony if somebody committed a crime that would point the bone, the witch doctor would point the bone, they would die just through the power of belief.
mm,
And so it's this the allopathic system really minimizes the power of belief in wellness and dis-ease. And
yeah.
you can literally kill yourself just by thinking yourself to death. You can
Oh
literally
yeah,
cast a spell on somebody and give them what the dominator system would call AIDS or coronavirus or any of this stuff just through the power of belief. There doesn't even need to be an invisible microscopic particle flying through the air. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. I
you
think
just
this is one of the things that I think has not been talked about as much as maybe it could have been over the last 3 years, is the impact on the power of belief to be well or even to be ill. So you imagine like people are watching TV and they've got all this fear porn going on just constantly, and they literally are convinced with a strong belief that they are going to get ill and that they can die.
mm-hmm.
And then they start to get the symptoms of a cold because they're just detoxing because they had too much ice cream that weekend or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately the body goes into a panic response. Oh no, I've got the thing. I might die. Oh my goodness, I've got to go to hospital. And then it just gets worse. And I've read studies before. I can't remember where I read them, but there was a study around people who were being given a diagnosis. I think it was for cancer, and they were monitoring what happened because they were obviously doing the testing on them, and then they were giving them a diagnosis. So they had their kind of vitals and all the stats. And when people were told, okay, you have this cancer, you have this long to live, their condition began to deteriorate almost immediately from being told. And often people will literally die within the exact time frame that they're given because
Right.
they have the belief
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to die. So you can literally think yourself ill and you can think yourself into death, and you can do the
Mm-hmm.
opposite. So this is why I love Joe Dispenza's work, because
Yes.
you use the power of belief and the mind and the meditations to actually heal yourself. And I've been to his in-person retreat last summer, and
And
okay, yeah, so I was at Joe Dispenza's in-person retreat, and there were people with with disabilities, people that there was one woman that she'd been blind since birth and she started to gain her sight back. There
wow.
were a guy in a wheelchair who couldn't walk, who started to get movement in his legs again. Like I saw, and people coming with testimonials that had been to previous events, and they're showing their, body scans riddled with cancer. And then after the event, they've reduced by like 50%. It was just,
Wow.
this is all the power of belief. And so like, I love learning this and realizing
Mm-hmm.
this, like, wow, this is how powerful we are.
Yes. And it doesn't make pharmaceutical companies money, and it's all based in predatory capitalism.
Yeah.
And so this is the big awakening, is the power of belief and the understanding that the world, like Christiane Northrup said once in one of her lives, like, yes, it's, I mean, it was kind of dark, but it's like we have to understand that how the darkness operates so that we don't let it, you know, she said, don't feed the darkness, but don't let it get away with anything either. And we have to understand how the darkness operates in order to rise above it. And yeah, she basically said, like, it's gotten really bad. Like, you think it's bad, it is. Like, there's a lot of bad in the world. Let's understand how it works so that we can, create a new system that makes the existing one obsolete, essentially, which is what I feel you're doing by, exposing it. Kind of, you spent 2020 to do the exposure, and now you're making an exodus from it, and now you're creating your own structure that is more in alignment with your truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the key thing. It's always being in alignment with your truth, and just continuing to evolve, because I've changed greatly over the last 3 years. It has been a journey. The outer awakening and the inner awakening, it is all a journey. And I think it's important that we realize everyone is on a different journey. Everyone is at a different stage in their journey. Some people are awake to the external, but they haven't started going on that inner journey yet. And then there's others that are maybe doing more of the inner work, but they're not so aware. And there's just so many different types of stages where people are at, and that's okay, because that's where they're at. But what's important for me is to be in alignment with my truth and where I'm at. And so I got to a stage where I just didn't want to focus on exposing the stuff that was going on out there. I wanted to shift to helping people on the awakening path to navigate the world, this crazy world that we're in, more easily, and to do the self work, and to really step into their authenticity and step into their power, because that is how we create change. We can be aware of all the stuff that's going on, but if we're just angry and stressed and frustrated all the time, and we're not feeling good, we're not really living a good life, and we're not really helping others. And so I appreciate there's different people at different stages, but for me, I'm not really that interested. I'm very aware of what's going on, but me just knowing about it doesn't really change a lot. The question is, how am I showing up? Like, what am I doing in my day-to-day life? How am I impacting the people around me? Because often we focus on some random audience that might be watching our online content, who happen to be asleep, and maybe if we share this one thing, they'll just wake up. But what about the people in your own life? What about the people that you come into contact with every day? What about your friends, your loved ones? Like, it's being able to make an impact within your circle of influence. We have so much power in that respect, and we can do that, rather than focusing on saving the entire world and like trying to wake everybody up. That's just I don't think that's where our power is. But Amen. Everyone's in a different place, so if people are in that place, then that's just that part of the journey that they're on.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just, for me, I've been through all the stages, all the motions in the last 3 years.
Nice. Yeah. And it's, at the end of the day, it's like you living your truth and vibrating and feeling juicy in your own skin. That says so much, and that's so influential compared to like being miserable and like keyboard warrior and trying to convince the world. Like, I've been there too, and it's just so much easier. It's so much easier for the nervous system. And I feel that you're an empath as well. It's like, we're not designed to be on the front lines and fighting. Our nervous systems aren't built for that. We're here to be the lighthouses.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I for me, I'm quite sensitive. I'm an empath, and I actually found that 2020 burnt me out. My nervous system was like not in the best state, even though I know how to do the practices and things to help it. And so I realized that wasn't really helping me very much. And so I just became better at managing what I was focusing on. And let's face it, our internal world is very much driven by what we consume.
Yes.
So if we're watching, like in 2020, I was watching all the horrible dark documentaries
Me
and,
too.
you know,
Followed the
you know,
cabal.
oh yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
I know all these awful things. And I was like, oh my goodness, you know, and it was making me feel ill.
Yeah.
Um, and then, you know, following accounts on social media and Telegram, and it was all just bad. Oh no, we're doomed, all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're consuming that all the time, of course you're going to feel like the world is doomed and that everything is terrible. But if you didn't have the internet, for example, for the last 3 years, like how would you feel? You wouldn't be worried,
Yes.
like you wouldn't be worried about anything. So it just really highlighted to me the impact and the power of what I consume, who I hang around with, what stuff I listen to, what I read, what I watch, really has an impact on my view of the world. Because
Yes.
the reality is there is no one reality. There's like 8 billion different internal realities in this world. So you can have two people go through the same experience and they'll have a completely different experience of it, even though they've physically seen or experienced the same thing. You know, you can go and watch a movie with someone and you come out saying, oh my God, that was amazing. And they're like, that was awful. But you just watched the same movie. So what's the truth? Well, it just depends on the person. And so I think it's all about our inner world, and we can, you know, shift that inner world depending on what we're consuming and what we're focusing on and what practices we're doing and what inner work we're doing. So yeah,
Totally.
we have that power. Again, it's like the power is all with us.
Yes. There's a few more questions I want to ask you
Yeah, go
before we
ahead.
peace.
I'm sorry, my light is dimming. There's a storm
Oh,
that's
no
coming
worries.
in, and the
Oh, is
sky is
there?
just, yeah, the sky has just gone like dark gray.
Oh, wow. It's still pretty bright. So
Okay.
thank you. Um, so prior to 2020, from my understanding, you were a coach. Can you share your story of how you became a coach and an elevator of freedom fighters and what inspired you to take up this path initially?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm coaching now, but back in 2020, I was a high performance health coach.
Okay.
So I had a few years previous left the corporate world where I was a change management consultant, because I had lots of health issues. And that's when I first sort of really got into holistic health and awakening to the pharmaceutical industry and all of that kind of stuff. And I, you know, took time off, I healed myself, and then I, you know, retrained and then started doing health coaching. And then in 2020, that kind of started to shift. For a start, I lost all my clients because they thought I was crazy because they could see what I was sharing.
Me too. I got fired from like 6 yoga studios because they
Oh,
thought I was
really?
nuts. Yeah, they're like, "You're not wearing a mask." I was like, "Oh, I can't. No."
So yeah, like this is what I think a lot of us have experienced, you know. And so but what was interesting was at the time I was already feeling internally.
Okay, there we go. And action.
Yeah, so I was already feeling inside that that path wasn't quite right for me. Like I kind of enjoyed it, but it wasn't. I knew there was something else. And actually, at the end of 2019, I was living in Bali, and I
Oh,
had this crazy vision that came to me one day. It was just like, and it didn't make sense until we got into 2020 that I was kind of almost seeing ahead to what was happening.
yes.
And so what's happened since 2020 is I kind of transitioned more into specifically focusing on helping people on the awakening path. So still doing coaching, but also I created a membership community. You know, I was doing
Nice.
video content. I was doing things that I hadn't done before. Prior to 2020, all I did was one-on-one coaching
I
for
see.
health. And then since then, it's like, it's just as the months have gone by and the years have gone by, it's just everything has just continued evolving as I've continued evolving. And so now I am here to, support people who are on the awakening path to navigate this, you know, this crazy life and to really, you know, heal, get into your power, step into your authenticity and create the life that you want. But that has been a journey, you know, it's just
Yes,
been constantly shifting and changing, and I'm always evolving. So it just evolves with me.
totally. I remember you making a post about how some people were criticizing you when you first started your membership community, and they're like, "Why are you charging?" And like that.
Oh,
That's I. It was so interesting because I had experienced a bit of that too. Kelly was experiencing a bit of that too. Now
oh
it's
yeah.
kind of died down. I feel like people understand now. But like even when I was in the yoga community, I'd lead a kirtan. They're like, "You shouldn't be charging." It was just like by donation. They're like, "This is sacred," and I was like, "I would do everything I do for free, but my landlord doesn't take karma." you know, like come on,
Oh,
we're still in the third
absolutely.
dimension, guys.
I know, and everyone I know who does similar work has experienced that kind of pushback from people, and you know that says more about the people that are saying it than
Yeah.
anything else. And I think that again, a lot of this is just conditioning. You know, we've been
Yes.
conditioned to think that if you're doing something that's kind of you know, helping people on a more spiritual or emotional level, like you shouldn't be charging for it. Well, it's just nonsense. Like
Exactly.
it's just conditioning. And also there's a lot of people who have a sense of lack and they have abundance issues, and so
Right.
they will kind of lash out at people who are charging. And I
Mhm.
also think that one of the downsides of social media is, in conjunction with, you know, not just the platforms but in conjunction with the users, it has created a culture of free. So
Right.
everyone is competing with free content to get likes and to get engagement, and it's just created more and more and more free content. So now everything is free. So then when you do charge for something, people say, what do you mean? It's like it's not, you know. But
Yeah.
what's interesting to me is the people that say, oh, you shouldn't be charging, or why don't you do it for free, or you should just do it on a donation basis or whatever. I guarantee those people would not go into a restaurant and say, how dare you charge those prices? Like, I want to be able to donate what I want, or I want to be
Exactly.
able to eat for half price, or go into a Mercedes garage and say, I don't have 60,000 for a car. I've only got 10. So sell it to me for 10. Like the people wouldn't do that. They don't do it with physical
Things.
products
Exactly.
or services, or someone comes to cut your lawn and you're like, oh, you should just do it for free. Like that just wouldn't happen. And so there is a weird kind of mindset, cultural, like conditioned thing going on. And yeah, I've had that a lot, and all my friends who do similar work have had
Have
the same
experienced it
thing.
too.
But I
Yeah.
just, to be honest, I just say it's not for everyone.
Exactly. It's not for
It's not
everyone.
for
And
everyone.
I
I think I learned that from Kelly Brogan. I think she
oh
said that
really?
once, that someone was like going at her on her Instagram for charging for her community, and
Oh,
she just I think it was her, and she just replied, "It's not for everyone." And it's like
yeah.
I just say that now. I'm like,
Exactly.
well, it's not. It's
That's
not for
just it.
everyone.
In the Kundalini training, there was a lot of emphasis on seva, like devotional service, and then like part of that can be like, donating to a cause you believe in or to your guru, your teacher. And um, it started to make like I quite enjoy, like, for example, when I study with Montauk Chia, I like giving my credit card number and giving him some money because he's helped my life so much. Like
Yeah.
these teachings literally keep me sober from alcohol and cocaine. So it feels
Yeah.
good. And also, when I pay for a spiritual course or something of this nature, because I've invested in it financially, I'm far more apt to really take notes and
Oh,
really go through the
absolutely.
course, like, whereas if I did
Absolutely.
it for free, it wouldn't feel aligned and I wouldn't really go for it.
No, I'm the same. And you know, I've learned that, you know, I've, you know, given away free things before, free workshops and stuff. Hardly anybody even watches them. You get
Right.
hundreds of people signing up for them. And then you look at the number of people that have watched it. Because when it's free, people just generally don't, most people don't really value it.
Right.
And so I think it's, as you said, like it's an important energy exchange.
Yeah.
I I have, you know, attended workshops, masterclasses, coaching programs, had a coach, all those things. I would feel weird not paying for it. Like I want to
Yeah.
pay for it in the same way I go to a restaurant, someone cooks me a nice meal. I
Hmm.
want to pay for it, and I want to give the server a tip for
Yeah.
the good service, like, because it's, and that feels good, right? That's the
Hmm.
exchange. This whole culture of like everything should be free, I just, it's just weird. And I've never ever come across anybody who's an entrepreneur and is working for themselves who does that. It's
Exactly.
only the people who have got like a paycheck coming from some company they work for, and then they're like, how dare you charge for this?
Yes, or it's people who, can't stand on their own 2 feet financially, and as you said, they see you doing that, and they're because of their programming, they think, well, that's not fair. You shouldn't be so abundant. It's like, no, no,
Yeah.
no. We live in an abundant world. All the spiritual lineages say that, and that includes financial abundance. And you can't get poor enough to help the poor.
Yeah, exactly. And the more money that you have, the more you can invest in your business to expand your platform or to expand, marketing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The more money you have, the more money you can invest in helping more people. So
Yes.
but you can't do that if you have nothing. It doesn't make any sense. And so I think that's really, important for people to realize. And
Yes.
also, let's face it, if you are on a really, really tight budget, there are hundreds of free videos out there. There's podcasts, there's books. Like
Mm-hmm.
years ago, like quite a few years ago now, like what, 8 years ago? How long ago? 7 years ago. I was jobless, broke, and homeless. And so I didn't have any money. And so I was literally watching videos on YouTube, like inspirational videos, meditation videos. Like I was just doing the work myself
Yes.
with free content on YouTube until I
Exactly.
had some money to then do other things, which I then did. And then I got a bit more money, and then I invested in a coach, and then I got more money. And so I'm
Yes.
constantly investing in myself and wanting to pay others for value that I get for them. Like that's what makes it, the energy just all go around. And particularly
Yes.
within the awakening community, we all talk about unity and supporting each other. But then when it comes to like certain things, like, oh no, I don't want to
I'm not
support
going to
you.
pay
So
for that.
it's just really interesting. But
Yeah.
I just find it interesting and amusing because
Yeah.
it's just, it's just the way some people are.
It's,
And
yeah, it's just indoctrination from the Matrix. And I was
yeah,
talking with my parents the other night, and I said, isn't it funny how like we did all these math classes in school, and we never once learned about RRSPs, how to do your taxes, saving. Like we learned nothing mathematically that would actually help us
no,
thrive in this system. Like the
no.
graphing calculator was like $300. I never use a graphing calculator, or
I
like
know. We're just
proofs.
taught all these things that are just actually useless when we get out into the real world.
Yeah, it's totally crazy. And I have a similar story with like discovering my teacher, Montauk Chia and Lauren Johnson. Back in 2012, I was on Pornhub. I used to be kind of addicted to porn. And somebody had uploaded one of their trainings. It was a sexual kung fu class. Oh, we're frozen. So I
That
was
was
just
you.
sharing.
That was in your
Uh,
flow that time. So
yes,
you.
exactly. I experienced that. um, so yeah. So anyway, long story short, I I was addicted to porn. I went onto Pornhub. Somebody had uploaded one of Lauren Johnson, who is a senior Universal Healing Tao sexual kung fu teacher under Montauk Chia, his sexual kung fu video. He was naked. He was showing how to separate orgasm from ejaculation, different yogic practices. And I tried to follow along, but so much shame came up. I wasn't ready for it. And then a few years later, I decided I was ready for it. I had, gotten free of alcohol and drugs, fallen more deeply in love with myself, better daily habits, but I still couldn't really afford to study with them. So I just did what you did. I accessed as much of the free content as they provided as I could, watched so many interviews with them. And because of the passion, I believe the universe responded. And then I became more financially abundant as I did things like semen retention and retaining, my seed and eating healthier. And then I was able to afford, and then it was a little dicey. It was like, okay, that's 5,000 US. I really feel called to do it. I can't really quite afford it, but I really feel, okay, I'm going to do it. And then the money came. It
Yeah,
was just this like
yeah,
snowball effect of like an upward spiral. Like the universe, I think one of the most powerful frequencies is appreciation. The universe really responds to
yes,
gratitude and appreciation.
yes,
So if you have gratitude and you're, donating to your teacher and taking courses with them, the universe will actually give you more money to be able to take more courses to help more people, because that's the whole purpose of having
yeah.
money. It's a tool that we can use to help ourselves and others flourish, essentially.
Absolutely, it is just a tool, and I think unfortunately, like, you know, and I used to have this issue. You know, we have, many of us have conditioning, childhood conditioning, that says money's evil, money's bad. You know, like my mum used to say, money's the root of all evil, money's bad, we don't have money. Like it was all the same, you know, kind of programming that a lot of people have, and that really goes deep and it really sticks. And so you have to do the work to, you know, to get out of that. But as you said,
Yes.
gratitude and giving, you know, when you invest in yourself, when you give to others, when you're in the flow, like it comes back, like it just
Yes.
does. Everything is energy. If you're just like, you know, never wanting to give anything, and you're not grateful and you're always complaining, you're not gonna be in a, you know, in a great position.
Exactly.
So that's why it's just really important to, you know, have gratitude and do what you can. If you have no money and you're literally struggling to eat, watch free stuff. And when you
Exactly.
have got some money, like spend it on
And
something that's valuable to you. Like,
yes, exactly. Amen, sister.
yeah.
I have two more questions. Can you share some of your favorite books, podcasts, or resources that have been instrumental in your personal and professional development?
Oh my goodness. So many. Um, I would say in terms of books, oh gosh, I mean, I've read many books in my time. The ones that I would say more recently, I don't actually consume much content at all. I don't consume many podcasts, or not so many, you know, so many books anymore. But I have found, you know, for me, particularly in the last, you know, 3 years, the Joe Dispenza books have been, you know, amazing for me.
Which is your
I
favorite one? Do you have a favorite Dispenza
the
book?
latest one, Becoming Supernatural.
That's a great one. Yeah.
That's I think the best one. Um, I also really like lately some books by a guy called Jeff Brown.
Oh, I've heard of this.
There's one called Grounded Spirituality, which is very me. It's like
Nice.
I love everything that's, you know, that he's written, because yeah, my approach to spirituality and you know, all of this stuff is about being very grounded. I'm not into the new agey woo woo far out, like really far out stuff. It's like I
Yeah.
prefer the real, like grounded stuff.
Anchored. Yeah.
But grounded spirituality is really great. Um, and I also really love the holistic psychologist, Nicole
Oh,
LaPera. Her
yep.
book, How to Do the Work, is actually really good. Um, I mean, I've got
The
all
work.
sorts of all sorts of books that I've read, but if I reflect on kind of like the last 3 years, and then obviously there's all like the, you know, all the virus books and all of that stuff. But in terms of my personal, I guess my personal growth, you know, those books have been quite impactful for me. And, you know, podcast wise, I don't really, I'm really liking Kelly Brogan's new
Oh, yeah.
podcast. But I don't really listen to podcasts anymore. It would tend to be like if someone recommends, because all my friends are similar to me. So like they'll say, oh, I
Right.
just listened to this really great podcast, or just watched this really great video, or this was really interesting. And so we kind of like share
Nice. Yeah, that's
stuff
like my
between
circle
us,
too.
which is, yeah, which is really nice. But yeah, I'm definitely more in creation mode than consumption mode
Cool.
lately. So but yeah, there's just so many. There's probably a ton that I've forgotten to mention, but
No, that's cool.
I'm on
That's
the
helpful.
spot and like, my
No
memory
worries.
isn't very good.
No, that's helpful. And I'm actually in a similar place too. And it's like been a quickening of the energy or something, or maybe it's the good daily habits. I don't know what it is, but I feel very creative, and I'll think, you know, like I'll do a course with Montauk Chia and learn all these things, and that's helpful. But then if I just really take good care of myself and have my good daily habits, it's like I'm channeling my own teachings. And then I turn
Yes.
on the camera, you know, and then I'm able to just teach from my heart and from my life.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. And I think that, you know, whilst it is very, you know, obviously it's helpful and enriching to consume other people's content because it can really help us to grow and evolve and see things in a different way and discover things within ourselves. I think there comes a point or at least periods of time where it's good to kind of go within and to not have too many influences. Like I have some influences, but not many. There's not many inputs.
Yes.
I'm just very selective. You know, like I said, I just listen to Kelly's podcast, a couple of others, a couple of like authors, but I'm not really consuming from lots and lots of different sources. And I find that when I'm not consuming a lot and I'm spending more time just with myself, that's when I get inspired. That's when I get, you know, it's like I'm channeling. It's like stuff just comes to me and it's original and it's me. It's like it's coming from within me. It's not, you know, we do risk regurgitating other people's stuff if we're just constantly listening to what everybody else is saying. So I think it's important to be selective about, and that's another reason for not being on social media. I'm like scrolling and there's like all these different things and I'm just kind of taking it on as my own. And actually, you know, when I distance from that, I realize like, actually, I don't believe half the stuff that other people teach anyway.
Totally. Totally. Somebody said you are what you eat, what you drink, and especially what you think. And you're right. Having that, I think they call it viveka in yoga, discernment, to just minimize that input so that you can really connect to God and your soul and just be the creator that you're born to be. Because the opposite of depression is expression.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. The last question, can you offer any final words of wisdom or advice for listeners who want to live a more fulfilling and purposeful life during this Aquarian age?
Gosh, there's lots of things that I could say. I think for me, it's really all about coming back to self and really just knowing ourselves, having an awareness, like awareness, knowing ourselves, learning how to trust ourselves, valuing ourselves, loving ourselves. Like that really is where my focus is. And I think, which is, you know, is just so helpful because that is what really helps us to I think get into our true power and our true authenticity. Like if you don't really know yourself and love yourself and value yourself, like how can you show up in the world, you know, authentically? And so I think, you know, just going within, spending that time with yourself, you know, in an inquiry, exploration, you know, and doing stuff that you love. Like it's all about being and doing the things that you enjoy, doing the things that light you up, and really just getting to know and love yourself. I think
getting to know and love yourself.
The gremlins
I know,
come in the last few minutes.
But I think
can't
that's
remember
key.
where I got to, but yeah, I was just talking about like really just knowing yourself, like getting to trust yourself, love yourself, and do things that bring you joy. Like not just focusing on everybody else and everything else, like do stuff that lights you up and that fills you up, and really take care of yourself first and foremost. And then in addition to that, your network, your support system, your influences, the people that you spend time with, like we're not meant to do it all alone. Like we might have our solitary moments, but we are group creatures. And so, you know, finding people who are going to support you and encourage you and inspire you to be your fullest expression is critical as well, I think.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I struggle with, like, if I'm like right now I'm working on taking it really slow in new relationships. I've been celibate for a number of years now, met somebody potentially special, have a friend who's taking it seemingly faster. And this friend, and I've been making posts, retweeting Kelly Brogan's amazing reels, where she talks about how periods of celibacy after a breakup can be really powerful. Love addiction. She's talking a lot about Pia Melody's work on love addiction. And all these things are things I need to hear. And so I'm posting them. And then my lovely friend, my dear friend, she's like, are you trying to tell me something? Like, you know, like I was like, no, it's not about you. It's about me. Like, I really believe in the power of taking it slow, and I've gotten burned before by taking it too fast. And so I guess I'm just learning, and I'm just saying this to you because you're an empath, is like I'm learning to do what I know I need to do. And I feel really called to share on social media, like retweeting Kelly's post, for example. Even if it might trigger my friend it is what I feel called to share. And so I'm doing my best to just keep heeding the call of what I feel is God's telling me to share.
Yeah, good for you. I
Thank
think
you.
that's the most important thing. It's just being authentic and just expressing um, as we feel to, and just being authentic in that expression. And that for me is living your truth.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. And it was really lovely to connect with you. And yeah, I've been a huge fan of you
Yeah,
well, since I
likewise.
discovered you in 2020. So this has been a really lovely morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Laura. And so people can find all your work. Your main hub online is laurajanebolton.com.
Yeah, you can just go on there and find everything. You can join my mailing list on there. You can access all my other stuff. It's kind of the main point to
Wonderful.
start. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for your time. And everybody, please head over to laurajanebolton.com.